Welcome, I'm Darren, and I'll be your guide today as I look at 1996 and 1997 Bowman's Best football. When Topps created Bowman's Best in 1994, it did so with the idea of the cards being the card to collect for each player. And at that time, as collectors, we were still kind of thinking that. We were just evolving into the world of parallels. And so we didn't quite know how to think in those terms. And the idea of there being the card to collect, that still made sense. So the sets were built in exactly that vein. It was basically taking the idea of finest and making it a little bit fancier and a little bit more expensive. So that was what Bowman's Best started out as, and it was done with a very ambitious goal of being half veterans and half rookies. This kind of worked, but the card industry was changing rapidly, and really, about every 2 years, the card industry was different than it had been 2 years before. It was just completely different. And so everybody had to be on their toes, they had to be rethinking and evolving with the industry. And for Bowman's Best, what Topps decided to do was to shift away from the really novel idea that they'd come up with in 1994, which had worked in 95, but only so, it wasn't great. So in 1996, they decided, okay, let's go ahead and just make a regular set. But instead of making the rare card for each player, let's go ahead and make this more of a fun game to hunt. Because in 1995, it was clear to everybody that the future was going to be parallels. At that time, that was the big future. And that's what Topps decided to build Bowman's Best around. So the first thing that they changed about the card set was literally the card set. This was 180 cards like they'd done in the previous year, but instead of making it 50-50 veterans and rookies, this is 120 cards of veterans and then only 60 cards of rookies. So it's 2/3 and 1/3. That's the proportions that this set is built in. And it still had a lot of rookies, but the set was now being thought of as more of, basically they created a template, and this template would be something that they would expand out to, or they would use it for finest down the road. So right now they were building something that they would be able to rely on, and that was essentially the key. The second big thing to note about these cards is that they were built for parallels. And the big thing with finest was it was all about the refractor. That's what everybody collected. And the refractor effect, which was a rainbow holofoil effect, they decided to really lean into that in this set because they wanted for the effect of the parallel, or parallels plural, to be enunciated. So the card, all of that detailing on the back of the card that was so great in the 94 and 95 sets, that was kind of in the way. So instead they put this big football field in the back of the card behind the player, so the player is almost silhouetted against this gold football field with silver stripes, and then there's some background on the side to add a little bit of interest. But this is a very blunt force card design. It is very simplistic, and it loses all the texture that, well, not all the texture, but it loses most of the texture that had made Bowman's Best and finest as well, that made them really work well. They still had that. So the football, basically with the player, that's the key to where you see the effect. But on all the lines in the football field, they do still have the detailing, but they have a big field for the effect. And the card back is just, it's terrible. I really don't want to go into that. So since the whole key to this is the effects, let's talk about it. Obviously they have refractors. That's the key. That is really what finest is all about. And here they built that as their main parallel. But the big thing now was you wanted to get into serious chase cards, and not just individual chase cards. You wanted to get into chase sets. That was becoming the big thing. You wanted those high rollers to be buying lots and lots and lots of these packs to hunt down, to try to put together pretty complex sets. And so for their high-end parallel, they created something called atomic refractor. Now this is the same as the refractor. It is exactly the same. The only difference that they have between them is the fact that the atomic refractor has a bunch of little facets, little tiny squares. The whole thing is a grid of squares, where the refractor effect, the direction that that particular facet hits the light, is different. And as a result, you get this grid pattern that moves around the card, and then you have little stars that appear here and there in the card, and it creates a really lively and interesting card. It's a lot of fun. It is really neat. The only problem with these cards is the fact that there is a tendency for these cards tend to get affected more by that finest problem of over time the colors kind of fade. It's more in the refractor cards, and especially the atomic refractors, where you tend to see it, not as much in the main cards in the set. And on the back of the cards, the card numbers, they have a box and they have the number in it, and then they put refractor next to it and they put an atomic on the other side to differentiate between the two parallels. So that is the big distinction, but I mean, you're going to be able to pick it up on the front. And with the card set, they did make the rookie cards different from the veterans. So the veterans have a football field that is gold with silver stripes, and then they reverse that for the rookies, so it's a silver football field with gold stripes. Otherwise, the cards are done in exactly the same way, and with all the parallels. But parallels weren't the only thing that was going on here in the mid-90s that they needed to lean into. In the previous year, 1995, they'd only done one insert set, which was their draft, the 94-95 draft cards. Here, they decided to do multiple insert sets to give a little bit more for people to chase. And the first insert set was Best Bets, or Bowman's Best Bets. And this is a bunch of rookies that we're likely to get really excited about. Unfortunately for the 1996 year, this was an interesting year for rookies where most of the players we were really looking forward to watching didn't really get too exciting, but we found a lot of players that we wouldn't have necessarily noticed, like Ray Lewis and Terrell Owens, who were in the main set. So the Bowman's Best Bets cards surprisingly are more of a measure of how disappointing the front end of this draft was. Or I shouldn't say disappointing as much as the excitement about the draft was not the stars, it was the players who emerged from the shadows. And that's kind of the way this card set is. So the card set's already not blessed with the best rookie class that you could ever imagine. But on top of that, the real problem with this card is that it's a full bleed image with the full background, which is fine. But where in 1995 they made the background really work well, here it's just bland. It's the only place where you have the detailing is in the player and in the logo. So those are kind of interesting. And the rest of it just, it doesn't look very good. So it's kind of a weird card set in terms of there's nothing to get excited about. At least they do have the two parallels of it, but that's about all you got to go with. They also made a Bowman's Best Cuts set. And this is a set where they have, it's die cut. And I have no idea what the pattern is for this. This is a really weird card in terms of what were they going for with this? I really don't know, and it's not that interesting of a design. It's a cool effect, it's just that they didn't do anything with it. And what's really interesting is that on the card back, the card number is not in the white box. The white box is below the card number. And the white box is the place where they put refractor and they put atomic refractor both. So it's almost like they're emphasizing whether it's a refractor or not, because when it's not, you just have a white box with nothing going on. They just have the card number above. So weird what they went with this card. But at any rate, there was that. And then what I think is unquestionably the card set of this set, it's their mirror image cards. And the mirror image cards are pretty ambitious. This is the direct follow-up to the 1995, 94, and 95 draft pick cards. This is a double-sided or a double-faced card, so the front of the card is on both sides, and they have two players on either side, all four from the same position, and they have the full background, just like with the Bowman's Best, for one player, and then they have a little swoosh with another player's headshot there. On the card back, it's the same thing with two different players. So you get four players, often some really, really good stars stuffed together onto one card. And just like the previous year, the card is a little bit thinner than the regular cards because they don't have a card back. It's two card fronts that they make a thinner card and it's a more rigid card. But it means that you have the same effect on the front as well as on the back of this card. And that also applies to the parallels. So they do have the refractors, and they have the atomic refractors where both the front and the back are affected in the same way. Thankfully for us, they didn't play any tricks with doing front yes, back no, and then reverse and do all that. They basically just made three versions of every single card: the regular, the refractor, and the atomic refractor. And that's all that they needed to go with. But there is one other thing to talk about with 1996, which is that at the Super Bowl card show, they did release packs of these cards for promos. And these cards they're done in some ways kind of like what had been done in the 1991 Stadium Club card, kind of. The way the cards are done is they are identical in every single way to the regular cards in the set, except they have a Super Bowl logo stuck into the cards. So in the typical finest way, it's stuck right in there, cool little emblem. Otherwise the cards are the same, but here's where it gets tricky, and you gotta follow me on this. They only did half of the cards. So you have a 180 card set. They only did 90 cards, only veterans, but it's a skip number card set. So there are 120 veterans. They only did 90 of them scattered throughout. And the card set is a jumbled mess of players showing up all over the place. And this is why it gets confusing. If you, in my case, whenever I put together a binder with one of these sets where everyone's scattered around, I like to reorder it so that I start with Atlanta and I go through Washington. I do that because I think in terms of the 1990 card sets, that's the way that the teams were all set up. Phoenix was where the Cardinals played at that time. They later would become the Arizona Cardinals. So if you do that for 1996, you're starting with the Arizona Cardinals and you're moving all the way through Washington. And if you order the card set that way and you lay out all the cards, you start off with the Arizona Cardinals and you make your way through. If you get all the way to the end of the New York Jets with Adrian Morrell, that's the 90th card. Card number 91 is the beginning of the Oakland Raiders. So if you're looking for any card for any player all the way from Arizona through New York, you're good. The players are in here. But if you're a fan looking for Oakland, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, San Diego, San Francisco, Seattle, Tampa, Washington, if you're looking for any of those teams, if you're looking for Steve Young, Jerry Rice, Junior Seau, they're not in this card set. This card set does not include any of those players scattered throughout. It's a really weird setup that they had. So it is a 90 card set of all the teams through New York with no rookies, only veterans. It's a weird setup that they've got, but that is the way that this card set is. And the cards are pretty rare to come by, so it's not like you're going to run into them all the time. But I hope you followed along with that. And so that is what they did for 1996. It actually wasn't that cumbersome. It's just a little bit complex in what they did. For 1997, they added a bit of interest to it. And that starts with the way that the cards were built. Now, the card set's done in exactly the same way. Veterans with gold, rookies with silver at the end. The cards, though, do not use the finest effect where they have all the contours in it. And it's a weird thing to say because we're actually going to get back into that in a bit. But for the main cards in the set, they used a different finish on the surface that's all smooth. That is the key. The whole surface of the card is smooth. And so they don't have any ridges. But they do have an effect within it where if you get the light right, you'll notice that they do have some imprints in it that the effect is kind of interesting to look at, but at the same time there's something missing. It really doesn't feel the same as the finest cards. The card is designed so that there is a gold background with a football pattern in it, well, a football cut in the middle of the card for the background to be in, but there is a football pattern print, the actual leather print, as well as the laces that are hidden in as an effect inside of that background. So there's actually a texture within it, it's kind of tough to see. Once you see it, it's kind of cool, but it's kind of fleeting. So that's the effect of the card. And then the card back is better, which is, it's not hard to be better, but this wasn't about the card back. But you will notice that on the card back, for the number, they have a big white box. And the white box is for the text for the refractors. So instead of wedging it in there, they now have a lot more room. These cards did come with the same two refractors, and the refractors look essentially the same. It's just without the contours on it. So you get the regular refractor and the atomic refractor, and the atomic refractor does use the same pattern that had been used in 1996. Still a really nice pattern. And then for the rookies, same thing. It's the rookies come across the same way with silver up in the corners. Otherwise, it is identical to the regular cards in the set, parallels, everything. And there's really nothing more to talk about with the main set. Now it starts to get kind of interesting because prior to the release of the set, they did do preview cards in Stadium Club packs. So this is very similar to what had been done in 1994 when they debuted Bowman's Best in football with these Stadium Club cards. Now in 94, they had the members only parallel of the entire set of Stadium Club. So they had that parallel of those cards. In this case, they don't have the parallel for members only. They only have the releases that were done in the packs. But the first thing that's significant about these cards is the fact that they actually do have the finest technology on the front. The card surface has all of those contours. And in the football print, here it's just kind of a stippled effect, which is really neat. The lighting is really cool. It'd be nice to have more of a football print pattern like they've done in the main cards, but having all the contours is such an advantage. I really do love it. And on the card back, the card backs are done basically the same. I mean, obviously, both the card numbers and the images are different. But on the back, they're BBP and then the number. And they are identical in every other way. But they have veterans and rookies. And the veteran card set is 15 cards. The rookie card set is 15 cards. But like in 1994, it's 1 through 15 and 1 through 15. So the cards do repeat. You either have the gold or you have the silver. Do keep that in mind. So if you're trying to put together the set, you can't mix up the veterans and the rookies. They are separate sets. It's 30 total cards. And while they don't have a members only parallel, they do have the refractor parallel and the atomic refractor parallel. So this is truly a miniature set of the main set, just with the finest effect. That's really the big difference. But here's where it really gets interesting, because then in the main set, they had autograph cards that they did. And the autograph cards are veterans and rookies both. With these cards, they're exactly the same as the main cards in the set. The image is the same, the card number is the same, but the technology for the card is the finest technology. So these cards look more like the preview cards, even though they are parallels to the main cards in the set. Kind of frustrating. And kind of cool, because the frustrating part is, why didn't they just do it for the main cards in the set? But whatever reason they did or didn't do. So with these cards, they do have the autograph, and they have the autograph seal embedded in, just like with the Super Bowl logo I talked about in 1996. And the cards also do come as refractors as well, also with atomic refractors. So you can get each one of these autographs in all three forms. So yeah, quite a bit. And those cards do function as basically one of the insert sets. So they only have two other insert sets for 1997. The first one being Best Cuts. And the Bowman's Best Cuts card here, this is where they're actually using the technology well. They're not the best cards in the world, but they are really nice. They basically made text up at the top. That's what's really cut into the card. And then down at the bottom, they have a little field of grass, and then they have the player, all with the finest technology. So once again, we have the grooves of the finest cards on these cards that makes them a lot more lively. It makes them really kind of cool. And they do have both of the parallels, so that means that you're getting, this is where the atomic refractors are really impressive, because you get the atomic refractor effect with the die cutting, which just kind of enhances it. So really cool card set. But I got to note something. This is a 20 card set. It has veterans as well as rookies in the card set. The veterans all have the gold finish. The rookies have a blue finish, but they are part of the set, so they are amongst the same cards. So where the previews are two 15 card sets, this is one 20 card set that includes both veterans and rookies. Do keep that in mind. And then the other insert set that they did was their mirror image cards. This again has 4 players from each position. The cards are better designed. I'm not sure if I like them more, but at least the design of the cards is better. But here we go back to the same technology as the main cards in the set. So this is a smooth surface, and it has some refractive effects that are inside of the card, which don't really read too well, but that's okay, because as far as I'm concerned, you get the regular cards out of the way, and then you start focusing your attention on the refractor and the atomic refractor cards, which are the ones that are a lot of fun. And just like in 1996, this is a 2 front card, so they have the effect on both the front and the back on each of the different parallels. And I'd love to say that brings 1997 to a close, but now I got to continue on with some jumbo cards that they did. Now the jumbo cards are identical to the main cards in the set. The only difference is the card number on the back and, you know, the dimensions. The main card set that they did was their 4x6 cards of 16 cards for all the cards in, or 16 cards in this set for a parallel of the regular cards in the set. And the card numbers are, you know, the only difference that you're going to notice other than the size. But the 16 cards, the actual layout of these cards, that will be the same for all these jumbos that we go through. Each one of these jumbo cards uses the finest technology. So once again, we're back to the finest contouring, which is just gorgeous. But these cards do come with the parallels as well. And this is where where it really gets interesting, because the cards were released, they were sold as a complete set. And when you got the set, not all of the cards were the regular cards. You did get refractors and you got atomic refractors mixed in. So you had to buy multiple sets in order to put together the base set. And that's how the refractors and the atomic refractors were released. It's all based on you purchase a complete set at one time, and then and then it gets seeded out. So kind of interesting. And then they also did a set of these cards at the Super Bowl card show. And these are essentially the same as what I just talked about. The card set is the same. All 16 players are the same. The cards look the same. The only difference is they have the Super Bowl logo imprinted into the card surface. Still with the finest technology, still with the 3 parallels. And then also at the Pro Bowl, they did another card release, this time 5x7s. So these were even bigger than the regular ones in the main card set. So these, also with the parallels, so that was how they basically rounded this out. It's interesting because it's a very simplistic affair. Once you understand the basic rules, everything falls into place. But to sit here and go through all of this, there's a lot of complexity to go through that is unnecessary once you understand the rules, but it's tough to get a feel for these cards. The sets are surprisingly tricky. So I hope that I've laid it out well enough that you're able to follow along with all the pieces that we've gone through. If not, I certainly do. I encourage you to ask me questions about it. Check out the 94-95 Bowman's Best if you haven't seen that, to get a feel for where this came from. As always, check out my other videos if you haven't had a chance. Subscribe if you haven't done so already. And thank you very much for watching.